Greetings Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. Great to have everybody here. We are going to go live momentarily in Washington for the Big Boy News Conference with Joe Biden. This is seen by some as a make or break event for the president as he seeks re-election. This is being promoted as an event where he gets to prove that he still has what it takes to handle a news conference, answer questions from reporters. But I'll tell you, 1 hour ago, he came out on stage at the NATO summit where this news conference is going to be held. He came out on stage with the NATO leaders and Volodymyr Zelensky. Talked about the NATO-Ukraine compact. As he introduced Zelensky, he didn't introduce him as Zelensky. He introduced him as Vladimir Putin and then had to correct himself. So even before the Big Boy News Conference begins, he's already made a pretty major faux pas at the prelude to the Big Boy News Conference. So I don't know how well this is going to go. This could very well end up being a huge disaster. It may well be a make or break moment for Joe Biden as he prepares to take on Donald Trump in this re-election campaign. And today, George Clooney calling on, well, it was actually yesterday, wasn't it, that he came out and publicly said that Biden should step aside, and this happening just about a week or so after Clooney hosted a big fundraiser for the president's campaign. Didn't go well. None of this is going well. Let's take a little break. When we come back, Biden should be just about ready to begin his, I don't know why they're calling it the Big Boy News Conference. I'm still not clear on that, but maybe if somebody in the chat knows, maybe you can let me know. I'll keep an eye open over there. I'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching.
The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching. Greetings brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, the news conference was supposed to begin 4 minutes ago. Biden running a little late. He was on time for the Ukraine Compact announcement at the NATO summit. We'll see how this one goes. We have other news we're going to cover tonight as well. We're going to look at another huge infusion of cash into the electrification of the auto industry, another $1.7 billion earmarked by the Biden administration for big auto companies to get them to produce even more electric vehicles that it appears consumers may not even want, escalating the tension, the push, the pull, the conflict between Biden and Trump over EVs. Trump more pro-choice on the EV question. So we'll get into that tonight. We'll also be joined later in the broadcast by Geoff Bottoms. He is someone I've known for quite a few years. He organizes events to pay tribute to veterans. He was the key organizer for the Southern Ontario military muster events, and they have kind of morphed into some other things that they do. They do things differently now. We'll talk about why he feels it is important to, I guess, recognize our history and recognize our vets. So that will be an interesting conversation. We have some old video to share with you to kind of illustrate what that is all about. Old video talking about his current approach to paying tribute to vets. Still no sign of Biden. He's now 6 minutes late. 6 minutes late to dinner. And what else do we have for you tonight? I didn't realize cross-border shopping was a thing, but I'm seeing a headline here talking about cross-border shopping. Every time the Canadian dollar becomes stronger, when it strengthens against the US dollar, border communities like Windsor, Ontario, they experience a surge in cross-border shopping. It can put real pressure on local retailers in those border communities. In addition to talking about that subsidy too, huge subsidy injection into auto companies for EV manufacturing. We'll also talk about tariffs being placed on Chinese competition in the face of all that. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about Russia's reaction, I think, to the NATO declaration on their nuclear strategy, their joint nuclear strategy. We'll show you why Russia is rattling the sabers and expressing concern about that. So we're going to see what happens here momentarily with this news conference, which he is now 8 minutes late for. Joe Biden facing a major political crisis, Democrats questioning the viability of his campaign, and of course his mental fitness, which was questionable even just a little over an hour ago when he introduced Volodymyr Zelensky as Vladimir Putin, as they announced the details of the Ukraine Compact at the NATO summit. A little bit embarrassing, Biden having to correct himself just a short time before taking to the stage for what is supposed to be a pivotal news conference where he's supposed to show that he still has what it takes to be the president of the United States and has what it takes to run the country, has what it takes to keep the nation safe. It's a high stakes moment, no question about it. And it was supposed to take place at 5:30, but now moving to 6:30, it's now 6:39. Still no sign of Joe Biden. This morning they announced that there was some confusion over the timing of it. It was originally supposed to take place at 5:30 p.m. Then they pushed it ahead to 6:30 p.m. The Ukraine Compact announcement happening at 5:30 still, but now here we are an hour plus later and no sign of Biden taking to the stage for the news conference that was rescheduled. Now 10 minutes late. He already stumbled during the first thing, and if he stumbles again during this, it could spell the end of his candidacy. This is supposed to be his big chance to show that he can answer questions and think on the fly, display his quick wit, his rapier wit. I don't know. I'm getting a very, very bad feeling about the whole thing, to be quite frank. Still no sign of Biden. I have the feed established. He can show up anytime. We're right here. Also, Trudeau today earmarking more tax dollars for Ukraine and pledging to increase spending on NATO, increase Canada's contribution to NATO, how much it spends. Every country being told that the 2% GDP spend will no longer be a goal, it will be mandatory. So Trudeau laid that plan out, and he's now earmarking another $500,000 for the war in Ukraine, or $500 million, I guess. Actually, 500 million, yeah. I think over time, over a long period of time. Plus, he's, I guess there's increasing tension between Trudeau and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, because knives are out for JT as well. We all know that secret meeting took place in Chrystia Freeland's backyard after that disastrous loss for the Liberals in that Toronto area by-election, that riding having been a Liberal stronghold for over 3 decades and flipped to the Conservatives, and that has been a catalyst for opposition to Justin Trudeau. Trudeau today saying that has actually been speaking with Mark Carney, the guy who used to run the Bank of Canada and a longtime Liberal, about entering politics. Some people saying that it should be Carney who replaces Trudeau, but Trudeau, true to form, kind of heading him off at the pass, talking to him about entering politics and saying today that he still has confidence in Freeland, but he's been talking to Carney, which is an indication that he might just be getting ready for a cabinet shuffle, and Freeland might just be pushed to the side and bring Carney in as an ally instead of an opponent. So that's another indication that Justin is planning on sticking around to run in the next election. He's not going to step aside. Too much ego there. And he probably has a plan, has something up his sleeve. Oh yeah, here it is right here. A card to play as he looks forward to the election and rolls out a plan, a survival plan. He has one. Make no mistake. It won't be a cakewalk for Polyev. They'll do something. Everything is getting nastier, nastier and nastier. It's going to get really nasty, especially down in the U.S. I'm seeing it already, honestly, and in ways that I think people are not really aware of. But we will highlight those nasty deeds right here on the Maverick News Channel. Still no sign of Biden. Now 14 minutes late. 14 minutes late for his big boy news conference. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, and 16 minutes late. 16 minutes late. Is that fashionably late? He was punctual for the other one. Who knows why he's not there? It could be for any number of reasons, right? Let's try to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's getting old. You have to cut him a little slack. Gotta cut him a little bit of slack. But he's still not there. Boy, I'll tell you, if I were in his shoes and I was trying to survive an assault from all sides, while I was seeking re-election, and I had to prove myself, I'd be there with bells on, punctual, not showing up. Now, 17 minutes late, and the clock continues to tick. Oh, not there. He's late. How long do you go? How many minutes to have to go by before you say the president is late? Well, I think 17 going on 18 minutes now is maybe justification for saying he's a little bit late. He's late. What other things we're going to talk about tonight? I don't know. I just know that this news conference is vitally important to this guy and Kamala. I think everybody is looking to her to replace him. And then Trump, having a little fun with it now. Oh, well, let me find this here. I've got this. Have you seen this? Let me see. Should I cue it up? Or I'm afraid to miss the beginning of the news conference if I run anything else. I'll save it. There's something pretty funny. A funny little video poking fun at Biden. And I think he deserves it. Because he was such a mean-spirited guy when he still had his mind intact. And now I feel a little bit sorry for him, but not too much. Not too much. All right, let's tuck out of this. I'll be right back. Hang on.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are Mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, folks. So I am looking in the chat here, and it looks like there's something going on over there again. I don't know what's happening. Some people not happy, I guess. Again, I'm sorry if you're not happy. I have no idea what the issues are. I am busy being, a live streamer guy, trying to say intelligent things. I cannot watch chats in Twitch and Wimkin and 2 Rumble channels and 2 or 3 YouTube channels, and all the other platforms that were on live, BitChute now as well. I can't watch all the chats, and they don't all flow into my screen here. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. I can't watch them all. So I do apologize if people are trying to get my attention. If it's something really important, I guess, just email me through the website at mavericknews.ca. I can always address things that way, I suppose. It's just the way it is. And just, be respectful, behave. Try not to fight too much, I guess, in the chat, and everything will be okay. It'll be all right. It's just a show. Well, it's not just a show. It isn't. It's this is more than I don't even like using the word show. I prefer the word program. I've always preferred the word program over show when dealing with news content, because a show suggests that I'm here to entertain you. I'm not. I'm here to act as your eyes and ears when out covering stories in the field, as our contributors all are, and I'm here to convey information and to provide a journalistic service, a news service with some enhanced analysis and interactivity. So I don't really view it as a show. There are entertaining elements that we inject into it from time to time, which are clearly demarcated, just as editorial content is also demarcated, so that you can clearly distinguish between what is news and bona fide journalism and entertainment or commentary, opinion. So there you go. But anyway, that's sort of a sidebar. Anyway, I see that some people are flipping over and hanging out on our YouTube channels. Please, everybody, give us the thumbs up. That helps push us up in the algorithm, in the search engines. It drives the people at YouTube crazy as they try to suppress the channel. Doesn't cost you anything to do that. And of course, if you like what we do here, you can support the program by donating at freedomreporters.com. freedomreporters.com, or you can also donate through the Give Send Go portal at maverickdonations.com. As I've told many people, I keep saying it over and over again on these shows. Please like, share, subscribe. If you do donate $30 or more, I can send you a t-shirt. Just tell me what size you want. They come in any color you want as long as they're black. We also have, I'm getting some new hoodies made because we still have some, but not all sizes available. So if you want a hoodie, $60 or more, and I'll send you a hoodie, a Maverick News hoodie, or a embroidered Maverick News shirt. Kind of like the stylish one I have on right now with the embroidered logo. They're quite nice and casual and durable. You have this shirt for the rest of your life, probably, because they're very tough, really super tough. Wears like a pig's nose. What was it that? What was that old commercial? I don't know. I'd have to look it up. No, still no sign of Biden now, and 25 minutes late. 25 minutes late. Yep. I'm following it. I've got 2 feeds open here for it, and he's still not there. Where the heck is he? This is already a dumpster fire. This is supposed to save his candidacy? He screwed up an hour and a half ago, and now he's late to the party by, 25 minutes now. 25 minutes. 25 minutes late. Wow. What a disaster. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. No, believe it. It's 2024. Still waiting. Waiting, Joe. Where are you? Where is Joe now 26 minutes late to his own news conference? The world is waiting, Joe. And here on the Maverick News Channel, the world is watching.
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! Too much!
Okay, we're still hanging in there. We're still waiting for Joe Biden to show up. Now, how many minutes is that? 27 minutes late. In 3 minutes, it will be a full half hour late to his own news conference to save his candidacy at the NATO summit, to show that he still has a brain, a functional mind. It's becoming increasingly difficult to give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll see what happens. They'll wheel him in there. That's somehow, some way. Wow. Oh, man. There are these reports out tonight that the United States is saying, hang on, do we have him? Do we have him? Do we have him? Nope, still not there. 28 minutes late. I guess that there are these reports coming out that Russia planned to assassinate the CEO of a major German arms manufacturer. This company provides artillery ammunition and armored vehicles to Ukraine. U.S. officials, a U.S. official, reporting tonight that this plot was apparently uncovered and disrupted by U.S. and German authorities. So this alleged plot targeted Armin Paperger, the chief executive of Rheinmetall AG, Rheinmetall AG, Europe's largest producer of ammunition. This company makes 155 millimeter artillery rounds for Ukraine and plans to open some additional manufacturing facilities inside the country to produce ammunition and armored vehicles, which will also include the Lynx infantry fighting vehicle. Intelligence agencies in the United States say they discovered the plan to go after Paperger. I'm not familiar with who this man is. Earlier this year, and they informed the German government. So he, I guess, is one of a number of defense industry chiefs in Europe that have been targeted, but the plot against him, according to U.S. intelligence, was believed to be more advanced, or so they say. That's the language being used to describe this situation. Okay, it's now a full half hour. Biden still no sign of him. So I don't know what proof they have to lay this out. Not exactly clear. Looking for more information on this. Maybe we'll find out more before the end of the broadcast. Normally, though, I would say if they don't have something in terms of like hard evidence, they wouldn't go public with it. They must have something. So we'll see. Joe, where are you, Joe? We have the feed locked in. I can see it in the preview window here on my system, but no sign of the president. Now over half an hour late. What is going on? Unbelievable. Has anyone seen Joe? Any comments in the chat tonight? Oh, it's his sleepy time. Yeah, they have to get this done before 8 p.m. because they said just the other day that he functions up until about 8 o'clock. Then he has to go for nappy time, for his Betty Bye time. Because he's after 8 p.m., he's pretty much done. Gonzo, sleeping. If he isn't already sleeping, maybe he had to go to bed early. Maybe they'll have to reschedule it for another day. I don't know. Frank says it is sleepy time for Joe. Peter says, evening, Jesse. Yeah, hi, Jesse. I don't know. Let me go over on Rumble and see what people are saying over there. Hello, everybody over on Rumble. Rumble 1. Gotta turn my audio down here so that I don't get confused. I have double audio playing in my earphones right now. Okay, that's done. Hey, everybody. Hello, Sally, Tinker, Fringe Guy. Who else is in the chat over here? Sparkler. David, hello, sir. Yeah. Everyone's waiting to see if Joe can handle the news conference. This is not looking good. Really not looking good. Where is he? Unbelievable, man. Absolutely unbelievable. All right. Hang in there. I'm monitoring this. I don't want to get into anything else because when it happens, when the feed starts, it will come on and it will just it'll be on. That's the way these things are set up. There's no like lead up to it. It's just going to come on. So I don't want to get into the middle of something else and then miss this because we want to cover it. I want to cover this thing. So hang in there.
Fear not the storm, for truth is on our side. Maverick News. The world is watching. Exile. The Knights of Malta. Maverick News. Join us. The world is watching.
Wow, can you believe this? 35 minutes late. You know, you could look at this almost like a job interview. If I was looking for a job, especially the most important job maybe in the world, I'd be showing up on time. If I was looking, keep it. But here we are, 36 minutes past the scheduled time, and still no sign of Sleepy Joe. Sorry to inject that descriptive term, but here we go. Okay, we've got him. I think we've got him now. We ready to go? Here we go. I know it's starting. He's not on the stage yet, but I see one of the feeds has come through. So he's got to be coming up. One moment. Feed's going to be starting for sure. Come on, come on. We've got the feed established, but we still have a slate up on our feed. They have not provided the actual video yet. But I see a couple of the other feeds coming through, which we not supposed to use our live video now, but Biden is still not on the stage. So I'm watching. We're ready. Anytime, Joe. Feel free. No, 37 minutes late. I don't know. Maybe they just told everybody 6:30 p.m. Eastern time as a tease. I see that people are filing into the room now. So obviously the people showing up there, that must be what it is. He probably wasn't really going to speak at 6:30. Instead, a later time, because people are just filing into the room and taking their seats. If this was really a 6:30 p.m. news conference, they would have been positioned and ready to go at 6:30. There were some people there at 6:30, but now the seats are filling up. Oh, man. Well, while we wait, Trump, I'll show you this while we wait for it to start. Trump taking a pot shot at George Clooney tonight for throwing Biden under the bus and abandoning him, really. Saying, so now fake movie actor George Clooney, who never claimed close to making a great movie, is getting into the act. He's turned on Crooked Joe like the rats they both are. What does Clooney know about anything? He uses the Democrat talking point that Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, has saved our democracy. No, Crooked Joe, says Trump, was the one who weaponized law enforcement against his political opponent, who created the most devastating inflation in the history of our country, who embarrassed our nation in Afghanistan, and whose crazy open border policy has allowed millions of people to illegally pour into our country, many from prisons and mental institutions. Crooked Joe Biden didn't save our democracy. He brought our democracy to its knees. Clooney should get out of politics and go back to television. Movies never really worked for him. Oh man, I told you it was going to get nasty. All right, let's see. Still waiting for the feed to start. He's still not there, still not on the stage. But I am monitoring. We're going to get this thing one way or another. Come on, Joe, where are ya? We've got it. We've got it queued up. We're waiting. Still not there. Not happening yet. And the knives are certainly out for Biden. In fact, headlines on mainstream media even tonight saying that the majority, it looks like even maybe the majority of people within the party are saying that they don't think that Biden has a path to victory. And the writing is on the wall. Yep, some of those even directly involved in the campaign, some of those people closest to him, now telling some mainstream media outlets, like including NBC, which has a big report on this I'm looking at right now, saying they think Biden's chances of electoral victory are 0. The way they stand right now, 0. Can you believe that? 0. And that's coming from within his own campaign. He is toast. I don't think it matters if he shows up for this news conference at this point. Wow. Now 12 minutes past the hour. It was supposed to start at 6:30. That's what they said. And they rescheduled it from 5:30 to 6:30. Now 42 minutes past that time. But people still taking their positions here. Maybe it's going to be 7:30. Could be 7:30 before. Could be an hour. Could be a full hour. Wow. How are you supposed to plan anything with Joe? Oh, let's go out for dinner. And then he doesn't show up. Well, isn't this entertaining? Not. Trump expected to announce his running mate within the next week or so, maybe at the GOP convention. He's right down to a short list. I think everybody's speculating once that happens, he will begin to dominate the news cycles again, I think. He's been a little quieter since the debate, probably wisely, letting Joe kind of sit in his own mess. After that debate disaster. No, still no feed available on this newser. I don't know why. Wow, man. An hour and 44 minutes late now. 44 minutes. Maybe I'm making too much of it. Maybe they probably just said 6:30. And the whole world is watching, literally, tonight, to see what happens with this guy. Just checking other feeds. So we're waiting. There are feeds, multiple feeds that I'm looking at, still not there. Commentators just like me on other networks, just providing fill while we wait for Biden to show up. Journalists, and they are in their places. We've seen in recent days speculation, questions about Joe Biden's mental fitness, even questions about whether he might have Parkinson's disease. Questions about him seeing a neurologist or a neurologist seeing Biden. Not looking good for the prez. And then people taking pot shots at him, of course, every day. And it doesn't matter what happens. He's almost in a no-win situation now. And today, this video released making fun of Biden because of what George Clooney has done, abandoning him. Here we go. This is kind of funny.
So although I wish I were here with better news, the fact is that you and I are sitting here today because this will be your last week of employment. This is not an assessment of your productivity. You gotta try not to take this personally.
Well, I just had a bad night.
Oh man, I hate to laugh because I feel sorry for him. Yeah. So all the major players are there. John Kirby, Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary. They're present. They're filing into the room. And Biden expected to arrive any moment. Let me bring the feed back in here. Here we are. I have the feed established, but no video link yet. Just a slate still up on our feed. And nothing. No sign of Brandon. There we go. This happening at the NATO summit, where Biden has already stumbled today. I pointed out, for those of you just joining us live, we are waiting for Joe Biden to step up to the podium and get started with what's being called his big boy news conference. This seen as a pivotal moment. Still not there, though. And this is really throwing a monkey wrench into my my plans for tonight, because we had a special guest lined up here who was supposed to join us at 7:30, Geoff Bottoms, who pays tribute to veterans. But hey, maybe we'll call Geoff up and we'll have him fill time while we wait for Biden to show up. My guess is he'll step up to that podium right at 7:30 when I was going to call Geoff and get him on the line. This is not going well. Oh, well, we'll have to take it as it comes. I don't know. Hang on, we'll be right back. I'm going to click on a couple of things and see what else I can find out.
Fighting the Great Reset. By leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, we're still waiting for Joe Biden to show up for the 6:30 news conference that's now not happening at 7:22 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see. Disastrous debate performance. This is supposed to save his candidacy. He's an hour and, well, almost a full hour late now for this. And, well, I don't know, maybe they said 6:30, maybe they meant 7, whatever. And then earlier today at the NATO summit, just at 5:30 p.m., they held an event which Biden hosted with Volodymyr Zelensky, and he introduced the president of Ukraine as Vladimir Putin, president of Russia. Screwed up there already. Before he even got into this news conference, where he's supposed to show how he still has the ability to take questions directly from reporters. This is going to be bad. I have a bad feeling about this. We'll see. You know, even during the last election, he basically hid in his basement. There was basically no campaign. He was hid in his basement. Somehow he still got a record number of votes. It's amazing. Truly amazing. All right. I bet you he shows up at 7:30 p.m. sharp. You watch. I bet you. What are you guys saying in the chat tonight? Go back and take a look in there. There's hello, Dragon. And yeah, he says he needed a nap, poor old guy. Yeah, like he's not even functional after 8 p.m. So we were told just a few days ago. Lee says patience, old Joe will stumble in shortly. Yeah, I'm trying to be patient. Even the people around him, though, they just even the people around him just don't have any faith left in him. They're stabbing him in the back, providing statements to mainstream media outlets, saying that he has zero chance of winning. This is his campaign team. What is the point in continuing if your own campaign team says he has no chance of winning? Might as well just give up. With campaign workers like that, you don't need enemies. Roger says, it doesn't seem to matter how many times I subscribe. I still have to, every time I see it, as for some reason I keep getting unsubscribed. I think, Roger, that YouTube, if you're talking about YouTube, I think they are actually aggressively unsubscribing people from our channel, our main channel. Yes, I see the numbers and they don't make any sense. And I see a negative subscription number constantly now. So YouTube's playing some sort of a crazy, stupid game with us. Don't know what else to tell you. So I'm sorry about that, but I appreciate your perseverance and your effort to remain subscribed. So this is supposed to be an unscripted press conference, a test for Joe Biden tonight. And of course, this happening at the NATO summit. So I think initially the statements will probably revolve around the United States' relationship with other NATO nations. And the question of Ukraine will certainly take center stage. But then when the questions come, watch for it. They're going to focus. The media will be focusing on is mental fitness. And some of the Democrats closest to Biden even are calling on him to exit the presidential race. He's in big trouble. If he doesn't get through this news conference stumble free, he's done. I think he's done anyway. Now, unless he can come out here and knock it out of the park, deliver a couple of zingers. Here we go.
Hey, buddy.
Thank
you. Please be seated. Well, good evening. We just concluded this year's NATO summit, and the consensus among the members was it was a great success. It's especially momentous because it represented the 75th year of the most important military defense alliance in the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out of the wreckage of World War II, the most destructive war in history. The idea was to create an alliance of free and democratic nations that would commit themselves to a compact of collective defense. Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's worked because a would-be aggressor knows if they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. But this time, no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence be declassified so I could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent. I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself. Many foreign policy experts thought, as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger than it has ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance, and it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear he has no commitment to NATO. He's made it clear that he would feel no obligation to honor Article 5. He's already told Putin, and I quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." In fact, the day after Putin invaded Ukraine, here's what he said. It was genius. It was wonderful. Some of you forgot that, but that's exactly what he said. But I made it clear, a strong NATO is essential to American security. And I believe the obligation of Article 5 is sacred. And I would remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin. I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than a political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself, is the world safer with NATO? Are you safer? Is your family safer? I believe the American people know. The answer to all those questions is yes. And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because of our alliances. I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We're an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to three other key issues. Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down. Overall prices fell last month. Core inflation is the lowest it's been in 3 years. Prices are falling for cars, appliances, and airfares. Grocery prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further. Meanwhile, Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy, including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities. And economists tell us that that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, Our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working. After Trump killed the bipartisan effort to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked on, because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office. Third, for months, the United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That framework is now agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close, but we're making progress. The trend is positive, and I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began. We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here. Reuters, Geoff Mason.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one, the fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so I'm just going to keep moving, and because, look, I got more work to do. We've got more work to finish. There's so much, we made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million jobs. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Their prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Danny Kemp, AFP.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin. I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is, well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was. Next one, Nancy Cordes, CBS.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned other instances in history where presidents have faced a challenge, but what makes this moment in history so unique is that it is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job over the past 4 years. Have you spent time thinking about what it would mean for your legacy, which you've worked decades to build, if you stay in the race, despite the concerns that voters say they have, and you lose to someone who you yourself have argued is unfit to return to the Oval Office?
Well, look, I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started. As you recall, understandably, many of you and many economists thought my initial initiatives that I put forward, can't do that, it's going to cause inflation, things are going to skyrocket, the debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists? 16 economic Nobel laureates said I've done a hell of a job. That under my plans so far and what's going to happen in the future if I'm reelected, that things are going to get much better. Our economy is growing. I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory, that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president what I believed when I was a senator. And that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well. They do fine. And guess what? Find me an economist, a mainstream economist who said we haven't done well. What have we not done that isn't working right now? And so we got more to do, though. We got to finish the job. And by the way, I come from the corporate state of the world. Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined. I'm not anti-corporate, but corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic, doubled. It's time things get back in order a little bit. It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase in corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, I know, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union. Well, guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history. Not a joke. And guess what? We had the Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better. Everybody does better. And we talk about how, for example, remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States? Used to be 40% of the industry. We invented the chip. 40% of the industry is in the United States. And former presidents decided that the best way to do it is find the cheapest labor in the world, send the product over there and import what the product was. And so what did I do? I was told not to go over to Europe, to Asia, including Europe, but Asia. And I remember going to South Korea, convincing them to invest $20 billion in the United States to build computer chip factories. And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world and you have the best workers in the world. So the whole idea here is we've invested, there's over $50 billion in investment in computer chip manufacturing just coming in the bean. None of you thought that would happen. None of you thought that would happen. But it's happening. It's happening. And it's going to grow economies. All three, and by the way, red states and blue states. Manufacturers as much in red states as blue states. I've made no distinction. So my generic point is that the idea that we can't continue to build and grow the economy, make it fairer. And like I said, from my standpoint, when the middle class does well, that's when the whole economy grows. The poor have a shot, the wealthy do well, but the wealthy got to start paying their taxes.
As a follow-up, sir, you mentioned that your Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that? What is it about her attributes and her accomplishments over the last 4 years that make her ready to serve on day one if necessary?
First of all, the way she's handled the issue of freedom of women's bodies to have control over their bodies. Secondly, her ability to handle almost any issue on the board. This was a hell of a prosecutor. She was a first-rate person, and in the Senate, she was really good. I wouldn't have picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning, I made no bones about that. She is qualified to be president. That's why I picked her. Felicia Schwartz, Financial Times.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done, where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball? I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing. And I have, I don't know how many, don't hold me to it, roughly 20 major events. Some of them with thousands of people showing up. And so I just think it's better. I always have an inclination, whether I was playing sports or doing politics, just to keep going, not stop. I just gotta just pace myself a little more. Pace myself. And the next debate, I'm not gonna be traveling into 15 time zones a week before. Anyway, that's what it was about. That's what it was about. And by the way, even with that, I love my staff, but they add things all the time, at the very end. I'm catching hell from my wife for that. Anyway. I'm sorry, Zeke Miller, Associated Press.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 questions for you. First, on the NATO summit, President Zelensky, in your meeting with him, he pressed you to lift your limitations on the Ukrainian use of American weapons, saying that, in his public remarks afterwards, saying that Ukraine cannot win the war unless those limitations are lifted. Are you reconsidering your position on that? And then secondly, following up on Felicia's question there, leaders of your own party have said that they're not worried about that debate. They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that. How can you reassure the American people that you are up to the task and that there won't be more bad nights at a debate stage or somewhere else?
First thing about Zelensky asking for the ability to strike deep into Russia. We've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term, in the near or abroad, into Russia. Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not, but if he had the capacity to strike Moscow, strike the Kremlin, would that make sense? It wouldn't. The question is, what's the best use of the weaponry he has, and the weaponry we're getting to him? I've gotten a more long-range capacity, as well as defensive capacity. And so our military is where I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. And we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't go, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to
bad nights, sir. How can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage or it's a matter of foreign policy?
Well, I tell you what, the best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done? Am I getting the job done? Can you name me somebody who's gotten more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years? I created 2,000 jobs just last week. So if I slow down, I can't get the job done. That's a sign that I shouldn't be doing it. But there's no indication of that yet. None. What do we got here?
It's on full display right now.
Maverick, Pulaski Radio.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm well.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern. Many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
They're correct.
And yourself was warning just a few minutes ago about it. So my question is, do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice to European leaders to prepare for possible US disengagement?
Well, look, I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not having any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. He'd be a disaster. It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point. And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe. That worries Poland. And nobody, including the people of Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine, that that's going to be the end of it. And so what I can say is, I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong. You may recall, no one was talking about Finland joining NATO. I remember talking to Putin right after we got elected in Geneva, and he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, et cetera. And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine, because you're going to get the NATOization of Finland. And about 4 weeks later, I got a call. No, that's not true. Probably 5 months later, from the president of Finland, could he come and see me? in my office. I invited him to the Oval Office. We sat down and talked. He said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes. I beg your pardon? And so Finland joined NATO, 800-mile border is a significant, and they were already allies, but they weren't part of NATO. And you heard, I think you heard, maybe, I can't recall whether he said it publicly or in our closed meeting, but he wouldn't mind being repeated. He said, we decided in Finland, the people of Finland decided they had to be part of NATO. It was in our interest because of the joint ability to be together, to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden. It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly in Turkey and other places, to agree to the expansion. But it expanded. And we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations, 50, to support Ukraine. 50. And we were able to bring about a coalition of Europe and Asia, Japan and South Korea. I just met we talked about AUKUS, and we talked about the relationship between Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, the United States. We're making the world safer and stronger because we have to deal with the new arrangement that exists in the world. The Cold War is over. The post-war era is over. What is going to replace it? And I respectfully suggest I have a pretty good idea what that should be. I've convinced a lot of people to follow it, and we're just going to get stronger. David Sanger. Where's it?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Be nice, David.
Mr. President, the NATO declaration that was issued yesterday was very notable because it described China as a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine for its provision of critical goods to the Russians. That's part of a broader partnership that seems to have cemented in place in the past 2 or 3 years. I think one that you were a little bit doubtful of when we asked you about it some time ago. So I'd be interested to know whether you have a strategy now of trying to interrupt the partnership between China and Russia, and whether or not in a second term you would pursue that, if you could describe that strategy to us. And along the way, could you also tell us whether you think, just to follow up on Felicia's question, that if you were in a room with Vladimir Putin again, the way you were 3 years ago, or with President Xi, that a few years from now you will be able to go negotiate with them, handle them one-on-one?
Well, the first part of the question is, we discussed and I raised in the NATO summit, and others raised, the future of China's involvement, what they're going to do. What they're doing with Russia in terms of accommodating, facilitating, they're getting access to additional, they're not supplying weapons themselves, they're supplying mechanisms for them to be able to get weapons. And China's position is basically, and I've spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has, over 90 hours since being vice president all the way through, for real. And by the way, I handed all my notes. But my point is that Xi believes that China is a large enough market that they can entice any country, including European countries, to invest there in return for commitments from Europe to do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we cannot, we have to make clear, China has to understand that if they are supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament, that they're not going to benefit economically as a consequence of that by getting the kind of investment they're looking for. And so, for example, we're in a situation where, and we've reestablished direct contact with China after that, remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down, and all of a sudden things came to an end? Well, we set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me, and our military has direct access to one another, and they contact one another when we have problems. The issue is that we have to make sure that Xi understands there's a price to pay for undercutting both the Pacific Basin as well as Europe, and as it relates to Russia and dealing with Ukraine. And so we, for example, if you want to invest in China, as you know this area really well. If you want to invest in China, you have to have a 51% Chinese owner. You have to make sure that you do by their rules, and you don't have the authority, and you have to provide all access to all the data and information you have. There was a while there, as you recall, the last administration and other administrations, where the access to that market was enticing enough to get companies to come in, because they had access to over 1 billion people in the market, not 1 billion, but a lot of people in the market, and so they were doing it. But that got curtailed when we started saying we're going to play by the same rules. For example, the idea they don't abide by the international rules related to subsidizing products by the government funding. So guess what? They're not going to be able to export their electric vehicles to the United States without a significant tariff. Others are doing the same thing around the world.
100% tariff they're putting on.
But it is a concern. It is a concern that you have both China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, countries that are not necessarily coordinated in the past, looking to figure out how they can have impact.
Interrupt that impact?
Yes, I do, but I'm not prepared to talk about the detail of it in public. And I think you'll see that some of our European friends are going to be curtailing their investment in Russia. In China, as long as China continues to have this indirect help to Russia in terms of being able to help their economy as well as help them in, as a consequence of that, their ability to fight in Ukraine. The other thing that we talked a lot about is that, and I raised it, and I didn't hear any. I can't swear that everyone agreed because not everyone got to talk about it. But we need a new industrial policy in the West. For example, we talked about how both the EU as well as NATO has to be able to begin to build their own munition capacity, has to be able to generate their own capacity to provide for weapons and the ability to, it came as a surprise to some of us how we had fallen behind in the West in terms of the ability to construct new material, new weaponry, new everything from vehicles to weapon systems. And so one of the things that came out of this was we're going to be meeting again with a number of my colleagues, my European colleagues, is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate the kind of ability to produce their own weapon systems. Not just for themselves, but to be able to generate that. It's the same, it's what Russia's trying to figure out, that they went to China and they didn't get the weapons, but then they went to North Korea. But we're going to be in a position where the West is going to become the industrial base for the ability to have all the defensive weapons that we need. That was a discussion as well.
after you answered on whether you would be ready to go deal with Putin and Xi 2 or 3 years from now.
I'm ready to deal with them now and 3 years from now. Look, like I said, I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. And, but there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with. But I understand the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a problem. First of all, in this war that he is supposedly have won, and by the way, I think, don't hold me to the exact number, but I think that Russia had 17.3% of Ukraine that they've conquered. Now it's 17.4. I mean, in terms of percentage of territory. They've not been very successful. They've caused horrible damage, loss of life, but they've also lost over 350,000 troops, military, killed or wounded. They have over 1 million people, particularly young people with technical capability, leaving Russia because they see no future there. They've got a problem. But what they do have control of is they are very good at controlling and running the public outcry that relates to how they use mechanisms to communicate with people. They lie like hell through the constituencies. They lie like hell about what's going on. And so the idea that we're going to be able to fundamentally change Russia in the near term is not likely. But one thing for certain, if we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend, I know you know this because you've written about it, read Putin's speech after they moved in, what it was all about in Kyiv. It wasn't about just, anyway, read what his objective is. And anyway, but so I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk. Last time I talked to Putin was trying to get him to work on an arms control agreement related to nuclear weapons in space. That didn't go very far. So my point is, I'm prepared to talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination. There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me, because they're not sure where this all goes. And look what's happened in Asia. We have strengthened the Asian Pacific area more than anyone else has. We just put together with, today I brought on, I asked our NATO allies that we bring on the group from the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. I already mentioned Australia. And I met twice now, I think, with the 14 leaders of the Pacific Island nations. And we've slowed down what's going on there. We've slowed down China's reach. But there's a lot of work to do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly. SOMM from NPR.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asma Khalid with NPR. I have two questions. Earlier, you spoke about the ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. We're now looking at 10 months of war, and I'm curious if there's anything that you feel personally you wish you would have done differently over the course of the war. And then secondly, if I may, I wanted to ask you about your presidential campaign. I remember covering your campaign in 2020, and there was a moment where you referred to yourself as a, quote, bridge candidacy, a transition to a younger generation of leaders. I want to understand what changed.
Two things. Let's go back to when you talked about would I have changed anything that's happening with Israel and the Palestinians and the Palestinian movement. The answer is, as you recall, from the very beginning, I went to Israel, but I also got immediate contact with al-Sisi in Egypt. I met with the king of Jordan. I met with most of the Arab leaders to try to get a consensus going as to what had to be done to deal with getting more aid and food and medicine into the Gaza Strip. And we pushed it really hard. And Israel occasionally was less than cooperative, number one. The Israeli War Cabinet, I've been dealing with Israel since Golda Meir. I've saw some of the reporters around here come me all the time and heard me say this. The first time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk, and her assistant was Rabin sitting next to me. That's how far back I go. I know Israel well, and I support Israel. But this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution here. And so what was able to be done in terms of the plan I put together was it would be a process for a two-state solution. And we get the Arab nations to, particularly from Egypt all the way to Saudi Arabia, to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza without Israeli forces staying in Gaza. The question has been from the beginning, what's the day after in Gaza? And the day after in Gaza has to be, the end of the day after has to be no occupation by Israel on the Gaza Strip, as well as the ability for us to get in and out as rapidly as you can, all that's needed there. I've been disappointed that some of the things that I've put forward have not succeeded as well, like the port reattached from Cyprus. I was hopeful that would be more successful. But that's why when I went to Israel immediately after the massacres that occurred at the hands of Hamas, the one thing I said to the Israelis, and I met with the War Cabinet and with Bibi, don't make the same mistake America made after bin Laden. There's no need to occupy anywhere. Go after the people who did the job. You may recall, I still get criticized for it, but I was totally opposed to the occupation and trying to unite Afghanistan. Once we got bin Laden, we should have moved on, because it was not no one's ever going to unite that country. I've been over every inch of that, not every inch, the entirety from the poppy fields all the way to the north. I said, don't make the same mistake we made. Don't think that's what you should be doing, is doubling down. We'll help you find the bad guys, Sinwar and company. And all this criticism about I wouldn't provide when the weapons they needed. I'm not providing them 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great human tragedy and damage. But remember what happened when you had the attack on Israel with rockets and ballistic missiles. I was able to unite the Arab nations as well as Europe, and nothing happened. Nothing got hurt. It sent an incredible lesson to what was going on from the Middle East. So there's a lot of things, in retrospect, I wish I had been able to convince the Israelis to do. But the bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war. Doesn't mean walk away from going after Sinwar and Hamas. And if you notice, you know better than most, there is a growing dissatisfaction on the West Bank from the Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now. And so there's a lot of moving parts. I just have to keep moving to make sure that we get as much done as we can toward a ceasefire, and get those. And by the way, look at the numbers in Israel. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
Bridge candidacy in 2020, you referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders, and I wanted to know what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited. in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division. And I think, I won't put words in anybody's mouth. Most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that to get major pieces of legislation passed. And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and I hadn't inherited what I did and we just moved things along, anyway, it's going to change.
Last question.
Haley Bull, Scripps. Or no, Josh Weingrove, I'm sorry, was the next one. I'll do 2 more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats on the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy. I'm wondering how you're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about whether how the next week or 2 goes would inform your...
Am I using that way, you said?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's nominee?
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me see them out, for the longest time it was, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway. And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events, from Wisconsin to North Carolina to demonstrate that I'm going out in the areas where we think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, or people are already there. And here, look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls. We have headquarters, I forget exactly how many, I don't want to cite a number and then find out I'm off, but we have scores of headquarters in all the toss-up states. We're organized, we're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term. And so, and here's the other thing. I was in the Senate a long time. Very proud of what I've done in the Senate. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library. Anyway, I'm going to be going around making the case of the things that I think we have to finish and how we can't afford to lose what we've done or backslide on civil rights, civil liberties, women's rights. There's that little button we have. Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea we're sitting around, this is where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around, more children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? We got a candidate saying, promised the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. We got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still, and I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way, I'll end this, well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But I remember I made a speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press said, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. Yeah, you did. Democracy's not an issue. Democracy's not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to answer, obviously. But do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, I mean, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why I didn't, you say, hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
We've had some discussions over the past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams. And you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity to do decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff, I said, I'm going to go to South Korea, we're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea back together again after essentially having hostilities toward one another since the end of World War II. I'm going to move and see that we can expand it. You know, the only thing age does is help you with it, creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention. And so the point I'm making is, I think it's important that if the neurologist tells me he thinks I need another exam, and by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. I hadn't hidden a thing. You ought to ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out. And every single day I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it. But no one's suggesting that to me now. And I'll ask you another question. No matter what I did, no one's going to be satisfied. Did you have 7 docs? Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times did you? So I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam, I'll do it. But that's where I am. Haley Bull, Scripps.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to support for Ukraine. Does that mean you have not closed the door on further considering lifting restrictions for U.S.-made weapons inside Russia? And if I may, your convention is coming up where your delegates are pledged to make you the official nominee. If they have second thoughts, are they free to vote their conscience?
Obviously, they're free to do whatever they want, but I get overwhelming support. Overwhelming support. I won, I forget how many votes I won in the primary. Overwhelming. And so tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says, we want somebody else, that's the democratic process. It's not going to happen.
Even if that means they vote for someone else?
Sure. Look, I'll end this with this. I served in the Senate a long time. I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office and whether they think the topic they can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least it was a red state when I started, in terms of we now talk red and blue. I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is, I understand the self-interest of every candidate. If they think that, running with Biden at the top is going to hurt them, then they're going to run away. I get it. But so far, go and look at the polling data in their states. Look at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you'd all acknowledge, and you're all experts. I'm not being solicitous about the president. You're experts on this stuff. How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days? I can give you a series of polls where you have likely voters, me versus Trump, where I win all the time. When the unlikely voters vote, he wins sometimes. So bottom line is all the polling data right now, which I think is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started. I mean, it hasn't started in earnest yet. Most of the time, it doesn't start till after September, after Labor Day. So a lot can happen. But I think I'm the best I believe I'm the best qualified to govern. And I think I'm the best qualified to win. But there are other people who could beat Trump too. But it's awful start from scratch. And, we talk about, money raised. We're not doing bad. We got about $220 million in the bank. We're doing well. So with that, you have any want to follow up on any of that you just asked me?
Yes. You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Mr. President,
okay.
This ends tonight's press conference. Thanks, everybody. This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, what a disaster. Unbelievably bad. He's not going to make it, folks. He's not going to make it. They are going to run him. They're not just going to throw him under the bus now. They're going to throw him under the bus. Then they're going to back up over him. Then drive over him, then back up again. Then drive over him, then back up again. And then drive over him some more. And yeah, Trump is already, I guess, mocking him. All you have to do is go on Truth Social. Yeah, look. Already hammering Biden. Right here. He's they were taking notes just like me. Crooked Joe, I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief. My Yes, big boy press conference. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, though I think she was not qualified to be president. Yeah. He's promoting his Trump shoes. For crying out loud. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, he's already, look, he's mocking Joe Biden already. I don't know if it's going to play or not. This is a strange platform, Truth Social. Sometimes the videos don't play over there. Very weird. Very odd. So what did he do here? He stumbled and he fumbled. He stumbled right at the very beginning. He cleared his throat several times. Within the first minute 30, he had and coughed at least 3 times. And then there was that epic confusion where he refers to his vice president as Vice President Trump when he was trying to talk about Kamala Harris, referred to Trump as she. What a disaster that was. Then he moves on and lost his train of thought when he was trying to talk about what he referred to as the success of NATO. And then he seemed to go blank, paused, and it was clear he just didn't know what was going on. And then he went, well, anyway, and then moved ahead with other thoughts. On the computer chip topic, he seemed to get very confused as well, talking about Asia and Europe, confusing the two, and then made an additional mistake when trying to refer to his performance during the debate, talking about it as a campaign, and he couldn't figure out which was which, campaign or debate. He wasn't sure what he was talking about again. He lost his train of thought and got all discombobulated. And then there was that really big one where he was confused, saying that he was following the advice of his commander-in-chief. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the president of the United States. Another huge kerfluffle in his mind. He seemed to regain his situational awareness and started to say some coherent things, making reference to, excuse me while I do a... He seemed to regain some sense of where he was and started to talk about the Finlandization of Ukraine, in reference to a meeting he had with Putin, and then said, instead of the Finlandization of Ukraine, he told Putin that he was going to get the NATOization of Finland, which was an indication to me that he had regained his faculties. I don't know if you know what he means by the Finlandization of Ukraine, but that's something that it's making reference to Russia's concern about the expansion of NATO. And up until recently, countries like Finland have always had to sort of bend the knee to Russia because it is a superpower. And so living on the doorstep of Russia, they have to make sure that they're a very agreeable neighbor and adopt policies that don't threaten Russia in any way. In fact, I would say, though, that, it's the foreign policies, the foreign policy or foreign policies of the Biden administration that have put us into this very serious situation with Russia and have taken us to the brink of World War III, like a kinetic World War III, maybe a nuclear war. We're already in a third world war, which we need to recognize. But it's these policies of the Biden administration, of Biden himself, that and the expansionary goals of NATO that have escalated the risk of conflict with Russia. That's for another discussion. He mixed up Russia and China when talking about other countries and international investments, and then again lost his train of thought when encouraging people to go find what Vladimir Putin had written, apparently right after the real escalation in conflict between Ukraine and Russia began. It wasn't clear what he was getting at that point because he seemed to get very confused. And then when talking or addressing questions about whether he should stay in the race and what he needs to do to assure the public and assure his supporters and assure the Democratic Party and those in positions of power and influence within the party that he's still the right candidate for the job. He said, well, he wanted to say that it's important for him to, leading up to the convention, be seen out there so that they could see him in action. But he even got that mixed up, where he said, let me see them out there. He was getting it all backwards, jumbling up his words and his thoughts. It was coming out backwards. It's like he has dyslexia of the mind, not just of reading. And then at the very end, it was very disturbing to see this flash of anger from him, which I think was meant to be theatrical, but it seemed almost like it was uncontrollable. This flash of anger when talking about gun control and making reference to children being killed, young girls being killed with a single bullet. It was a weird reaction. It was, I think, weird because it was forced. And at first it was like, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to get emotional about this. Like it was like a trigger that he kind of pulled within his own mind. But then it became like this uncontrollable emotion where it kind of, he let the emotion control him for a moment. It was very odd. Very odd indeed. And then when asked again about his mental fitness and whether he had been seen by a doctor, he couldn't articulate properly. He wasn't able to refer to his neurologist. He was saying neurosurgeon and using other phrases to talk about or to describe what the doctor was, or say that he had been seen by a neurologist. But he couldn't spit that word out at first. He stumbled through it at least 3 times. And then it was strange at the end, after trying to tell everyone that he is the most qualified person for the job, then to admit at the very end that yes, there are others who could beat Trump too. When asked specifically if Kamala Harris would be up for the job, he kind of just sidesteps that, but says there are others who could beat Trump too, but then tries to backtrack it and say that it would be very difficult for another candidate to start from scratch. But he stumbled through all of that. It was like he sort of, I think, realized he shouldn't probably have said that because it undermines his whole argument for being out there, the whole purpose for him being out there tonight, engaging in this unscripted news conference. This was another dumpster fire. This was a disaster. There is no way they're going to keep this guy on as the candidate. He couldn't get through the unscripted news conference without screwing up. And it wasn't just like one faux pas. I mean, he had to get through this thing tonight seamlessly with no mistakes. And this, as I'm just sitting here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, at least 16 occasions when he couldn't handle the questions, couldn't express himself clearly, got confused, everything ran off the rails. What a disaster. You have to feel sorry for him at this point. It is, as many people have been saying, it's like elder abuse, keeping him up there and encouraging him to do so. The Dems are going to have to do something. They're going to have to do it right away, or this is going to be the biggest landslide in U.S. electoral history. I would think you're going to be looking, if the election were to be held today, I think Trump would win like with probably 80% plus of the voters voting for him. Now, I know a lot of people hate him, right? So maybe they'll come out en masse. Maybe it would be closer than that. But I don't know. After what we just witnessed, even those who are the biggest supporters of the Biden campaign, lifelong, blue-blooded Democrats, I think they'll abandon him tonight. There's no way they're keeping this guy on. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. Now, we're like an hour late, so I hope our guest for tonight, who's just going to do this by phone, can still talk to us. We're going to call up Geoff Bottoms.
Yes, sir.
Better late than never. I'm so sorry for calling like over an hour later than I promised you I would. Can we still talk? Do you have a few moments?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So we're live on my program tonight, Maverick News. We have thousands of people all around the world watching and listening to you tonight, Geoff. And just first of all, introduce yourself and tell folks what your background is with the Southern Ontario military muster, and then we'll get into what you guys are doing these days to make sure that we continue to honor our veterans.
Okay. I started the Southern Ontario Military Muster. I'm the president and founder. In 2010, we started it to honor vets, and we put on a big show down in the county here. We did it for 7 years. We had veterans down here, vehicles down here, reenactors, vendors, everything that you could think of. And we did it for 7 beautiful years, and then we finally pulled the plug on it.
Yeah, a lot of challenges keeping something like that going. I'm just going to run a little footage from, some of these past events that I have here. So I've got some images of some of the vehicles and so on. Oh, hang on, I need to change the speed on this. I've got it playing at twice normal speed. I'll slow that down. So what were the challenges in keeping it going?
Well, the show cost about $30,000 to put on. And through sponsorship and government donations and other donations, we could manage to do it. Well, all of a sudden, fuel prices started climbing. So to bring a transport truck from London down to Windsor was about $1,500. It just jumped to $2,500 for the same truck, same trailer. So the price of fuel is what really killed the show. Because a lot of truckers did it for basically cost price for just the labor they supplied the truck, but the fuel is what killed all that stuff.
I see. Yeah, and why did you start doing it initially? Why did you feel it was important to pay tribute to veterans in this way? And we will get into what you're doing as an alternative now, but why is it important?
Well, back in 2009, here at the Windsor, we had an air show, and we decided it'd be nice to have a bunch of vehicles, military vehicles. So a friend of mine and myself made a few phone calls. Before long, we had 27 vehicles here for an air show that basically we got together like 3 weeks before the air show. And after seeing that and the response to people looking at all the vehicles, then we moved on to creating the military muster show out in Essex, in the township of Essex, which was an absolutely fabulous show for the first 7 years that we did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you did these reenactments, you did, and you're a military vehicle collector yourself, right? And so an incredible display that you put on. Tell people about that.
Well, display is like a lot of the vehicles I have are Windsor-built vehicles. And a lot of people didn't even realize that Windsor produced so many vehicles for World War II. So, and some of the other vehicles I have are Korean vintage vehicles were built by Chrysler here in Windsor. And people didn't even know that neither. So it actually surprised the number of vehicles that actually manufactured here in Windsor, Ontario for the war effort.
Yeah. And with, the wars that we're facing right now, it highlights, I guess, the sacrifice that many Canadians have made over generations. Do you think people are, even as we face these new conflicts and new political struggles, have people forgotten their history?
I don't know if people have forgotten history. It is a completely different time period. When you looked at World War II, everybody joined the war effort for king and country, and then as time changes, everybody's feelings change. You look at the Vietnam War where it was so shunned upon, but it had to happen, and then soldiers volunteered and went for it. In Korea, the same thing, protecting another country. Now with today's, is it correct what, the Russians are doing? Obviously not. But what do? You got to help.
Right. So, again, I mean, is part of, well, before we get into that question, what are you doing now as an alternative to these full-blown reenactments and military vehicle displays, the full-blown military musters that you had been putting on? What are you doing now instead?
Well, nowadays in the city of Windsor, I take care of all the services that we do. Everybody thinks of Remembrance Day, but that's just one of them. There's Battle of Atlantic, Battle of Britain, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Peacekeeper, and so many more. And in Windsor, we celebrate a lot of veteran services where other cities don't. So I bring different vehicles to these events that we do for the remembrance services that sort of tie into the time period of the wars that we're honoring.
I see. And so then you're picking these dates, these anniversaries, when it's important to highlight those moments in history, and then you're taking them out into the community and either adding your voice and your support to community efforts to keep these pieces of history relevant and current in people's minds, and or even taking the lead on some of these events. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, the vehicles go to every shows, but we also do lots of other type of shows. Like we had vehicles up in for Shedden for the 100th anniversary of the RCAF. We took a World War II military RCAF Jeep up there. We were in London with the 1st Hussars with 4 vehicles that we transported up there, a brain gun carrier and an ambulance and a Jeep and 2 Jeeps we took up there. We're doing the Fort Malden display coming up in August for a 2-day weekend with 4 or 5 vehicles. We're also going to be at it's a new event. It's the Walter P. Chrysler event put on by Chrysler Canada. Actually, Chrysler US is putting it on. It's going to be here in Windsor, and we're supplying Chrysler vehicles made right here in Windsor for the show.
I had no idea. I hadn't heard anything about that. When is that event supposed to happen?
That is August. Off the top of my head, it's in August. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure of the date, but it's in August.
Okay.
But that's a new one that just crept up. Like that one, this first time that one came up. But we were also at the 90th anniversary for Chrysler's with a couple of Dodge vehicles that we have. So we get around with these vehicles and we show them off wherever we can.
Yeah, and I guess that highlights the industrial might that the West had, the United States and Canada had at that time during World Wars I, and in particular with World War II, and the industrial capacity that really became what was referred to as the arsenal of freedom. Can you explain to people what was meant by that at that time?
That's a hard one to explain. Freedom is always hard to explain. Here in Windsor, everybody everybody in this city worked for some shape or form of the war effort for World War II, whether it be working for Fords or Chryslers or GM, whatever. If they were in a paint shop, they were painting parts. We made so much hardware for the war down here in what they call Ford City, Walkerville. People don't realize much. We made helmets down here. We made shell casings down here, vehicles. We made parachutes down here, uniforms, machine guns, all sorts of stuff were made in Windsor.
Yeah, back in those days, I guess, all the automotive production, pretty much, the bulk of industrial capacity was shifted to the production of the military goods, the weapons, and as you said, everything from uniforms and parachutes to munitions and jeeps, right, to support the war effort at the time.
Yeah, if you own an automotive, let's say a body shop where you painted cars, well, you weren't painting cars anymore. You were painting military parts. It could be parts, pieces of equipment, whole trucks, or whatever. If you were a manufacturer shop that made nuts and bolts, you were making nuts and bolts for Chryslers during the war down here. And that's what everybody did. Everybody chipped in to make stuff.
Yeah. I think what you do, Geoff, with your efforts is you help preserve pride in our country, in our history. Are you concerned that today's generations maybe are not carrying that pride and love of country forward? It seems to me that we're getting some deterioration of that. I'm a little concerned about it myself. What's your view?
Well, it is hard to say. There are people that support it 100%, and then there's people that are totally against it, and there always will be. That's what life is all about. Even the military is going through growing pains. They've been trying to get everybody in there. Now they realize that they need to retrim their thoughts of getting people back in. To the services again.
Yes. Yeah. I'm talking about the country in general, though. I mean, it seems like these days some people just, it like they're almost ashamed of their own flag. It concerns me. I'm not sure how we unify people and bring people together if people aren't proud of their own flag these days. And I think with that, maybe we're losing some respect for the sacrifices that people have made in the past. Do you think it's important that we remember those sacrifices? That must be why you continue to do what you do.
Well, down here, we make sure that every event is remembered. But most people, when they look at the Canadian flag, they're proud to be Canadians and they're proud of their heritage. The biggest problem is a lot of people don't realize everything that the Canadian Armed Forces have done over the years, because it didn't happen here, it happened over there. And when it happens over there, it's not really in your mindset, because we never suffered over here. Not like in World War II, like England on rationings and Holland and Denmark and the food starvation and everything. People don't remember that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, today I was just out in the community and running some errands, and as I was just driving from one location to another, I was just thinking about what's going on right now in like Ukraine and in Gaza, and I was just thinking, how fortunate we are, especially during this time of conflict, to be living in a place where we're not being bombed here. It's still peaceful here, even though we have these conflicts over there. But that is also largely because our armed forces over generations have fought to, I guess, keep our adversaries at bay.
Well, yeah, they have fought, but today's soldier is completely different type of person, a completely different type of training. A lot of it's electronic warfare and remote control warfare than on the grounds. So they are a completely different type of soldier nowadays. And you don't have the masses of soldiers that we used to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different feel.
It sure is. It is a much different time. I mean, they talk about fifth generation warfare. Can you comment on that? What do you think the differences are today between the kinds of conflicts and warfare that's being waged now versus what we were seeing back in World War II?
Well, I don't really pay much attention to the news stuff because it's not my interest, but it's, when they use drones to drop grenades on tanks, and which is absolutely incredible what they're doing over Ukraine right now. It's absolutely amazing how their technology is saving lives on their side and blowing up vehicles on the other side. You didn't have that kind of stuff in the early years. So it is completely different.
Yeah, and I guess we're engaged in an information war, a propaganda war, a digital war, a cyber war, computer hacking, satellites. It's a whole different kind of ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, times have changed. Like all your World War One vets, they're all gone. They've all died. World War II vets, you're getting down to a very few left. Most of them, World War IIs, they're in 100 or 101, 102 in that area. Your Korean vets, they're now in their late 80s to early 90s. So all these guys are slowly disappearing, but we're also getting less and less number of soldiers from different areas. Like when we sent soldiers to Afghanistan, from Windsor, I think there was 5 that left from Windsor. Not like World War II, where there was like 50,000 that left from Windsor. There's a big difference, and that's part of the reason why people that the war stuff really isn't in their mind, because they don't notice it as much in local areas and towns anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shame. Everybody needs to always thank a soldier and always respect them and do whatever they can do to help them. Because what they did for our country it deserves the very best respect.
Yes, and that's really what it's about, right? It's remembering, respecting, and making sure that we do not forget so that we don't, as they say, repeat the mistakes of the past.
Try not to.
Trying not to. Sure seems these days like we're on the path to doing just that, repeating past mistakes, though. Seems that way. Not just, I think, on all sides, but I sure do pray for peace every day. You said it's hard to define freedom, but can you tell me, just on a personal level, what does freedom mean to you?
Just being able to do what you want to do. Own a house, own a business, enjoy going on vacation, traveling in our country and seeing Canada and even seeing the United States without any worry about, harassment or in some places over in Europe, like, people shooting you or bombing or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Just be free and travel around.
Yeah. Freedom of choice. Preserve rights, I guess, like, freedom of expression and freedom of movement. I guess freedom to make big mistakes too. and screw up your life if you want to, I suppose. Which, yeah, sometimes I'm pretty good at that myself. And just lastly, Geoff, what does Canada mean to you? Can you give us a few words of inspiration in these trying times, and just tell us why you love your country?
Well, that's interesting because, number one, I'm British. I'm not even a Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in London, England, grew up in Canada. But Canada is my home, and I respect Canada. And we have a damn good country. Excuse the language, but we have a really good country for doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You have politicians that, we don't want to get into that conversation. But,
yeah.
But yeah, we have a lot of freedom here, and it's a great country. Yeah, it gets hot and muggy, but it's still a great country.
Yeah. If it's not hot enough, pretty soon it'll be too cold. So it all evens out in the end. And I suppose, as much as people criticize our country, I think that's okay because I think it all comes from a place of love where we try to make things better. And maybe we get upset with our politicians, but do you think it's worth saving?
Oh yeah, it's well worth it. Yeah, everybody has difference, but that's what freedom is all about. We're all different. Canada is a country of immigrants. Always was and always will be. We just got to work together and make everybody happy.
And good luck with that. And again, what's the next event you have coming up again? Just to remind people so they can find where you're going, and tell us also how they can support your efforts.
The next event coming up, which is July 27th, is the Korean Armistice, which is in this case in Windsor, down at the waterfront. We have a Korean monument that we built years ago, where we have the few remaining Korean veterans that we have, which I think is about 6 or 7, and we honor them and do the service. And the Korean community comes down and honors them as well. So that's the next event that's coming up. And what we do, we try to collect, old military stuff and preserve it with the history and just save as much as we can so we can pass it on to museums or whatever. Like I have piles and piles of medals and stories and history of different soldiers from different years, different time frames. And, it's very important to preserve all this stuff. Some people want to sell it on eBay and make a few bucks. Well, shame on you. If it's part of your family, keep it, preserve it, and be proud of it.
Yes. And are you still able to maintain a website, or do you have social media or email? How can people contact you, or if they have something that they want to donate, or if they want to support you in some other way?
Well, we have the website and Facebook site. The website is militarymuster.ca, and on the website there's a link to the Facebook site. I don't the face. Just look up military muster. Southern Ontario military muster, and you'll find it. Our website has tons of information on different soldiers from the area, different veterans. It has pictures of some of the different vehicles. I'm up to I think right now I own 11 different vehicles, which is crazy. Trust me, lots of money, but lots of pride.
Yes, yeah.
And we do have a donate, charities help donation site that you can donate directly to our site, for sponsorship, because our biggest expense right now is fuel. Driving these trucks around is quite expensive nowadays. They're not exactly fuel efficient.
Yeah, just taking a look at the website here, you have so many listed on here, and of course you're a mechanic, so you're able to do a lot of the work on these yourself and keep them running. But very expensive to take them around to all these different events and share them with the public, right?
Oh yeah, like fuel. Like you take the Deuce and a Half, which I have, 1952 Deuce and a Half GMC. It gets about 5 miles to the gallon.
Oh man, wow.
That's empty. When I load it, she's down about 3 miles to the gallon. A Bren gun carrier gets about 6 or 7 miles to the gallon. My Willys Jeep, it probably gets about 20 miles to the gallon. This is probably the best one in the bunch, is the Willys Jeep. They are expensive to run, but they're fun to run, and it's actually, I get a lot of pleasure at it because, when I drive the Dodges, the M37 or the Ambulance, they're the only ones in the city. They were made here, and I'm the only one that owns them. And they're nice to drive around to shows.
Yeah, and there's a lot of history behind those Jeeps that people might be surprised about. I was actually talking about this on the program last night because we were talking about a military museum out in Alberta. And I guess, but they had a couple of Jeeps, and then I was mentioning that, these Jeeps were made by more than just Willys. Can you just tell people again a little bit about the background and the history on that and where they were made, who was making them?
Well, the original Jeep was made by Bantam down in the States. But for World War II, Bantam could not produce them quick enough. So Willys did a lot of them. But Ford Motor Company in Detroit here produced a lot of them. They're all exactly the same, except the Ford Motor Company has the letter F on every single bull, and the Willys doesn't. But they're exactly the same Jeep, the same engine, everything's the same for those. But a lot of Jeeps were made by Fords. A lot of them were made by Willys Overland in Ohio. And then in the 60s, they made the Willys M38A1 right here in Windsor, Ontario. They were made here for many years, the military version. And then that's what I'm working on right now is an M38A1 Windsor-built Jeep.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Geoff, is there anything else you would like to add or think that we might have missed tonight that you'd like to share with the viewers?
Probably 1,000 different things we missed, but you don't have enough time in the world to discuss it all.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to your event coming up later this month, and you're always welcome to come back here. I'll make a point of touching base with you again so we can get some updates on this stuff and continue to promote what you guys do over there at the SOMM. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight, and again, so sorry for calling so late this evening, but absolutely our privilege. Thank you, sir.
Only 9 o'clock. It's not late. I don't go to bed till 1.
All right. Well, we will reconvene with you at a later date, and thank you so much as we sign off for tonight.
Hey, Rick. Well,
Yes.
you have a good. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Geoff. You take care. Take
All
care,
right.
my friend. Bye for now.
Bye.
And that's Geoff Bottoms with the Southern Ontario Military Muster. And with that, folks, I am going to wrap up for the evening. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us here tonight. Again, on the Maverick News Channel, I will return tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love all you guys. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.